Okay, hello and welcome everybody to another Biggerplate video. I'm delighted to have on the call with me Nina Pearse, who's joining me from South Africa, who's going to talk to us a little bit today about her business that she runs with Celia called Creativity Wake Up. Really excited to talk to Nina about creativity in general and learn a little bit about what you and Celia have been doing recently, what you're going to be doing in the future, and sort of how you came to where you are today and sort of where mind mapping fits. So Nina, thank you very much for joining me, and thank you to you and Celia for being Biggerplate partners and sort of joining our kind of network of mind mapping experts around the world. First of all, how's things over in South Africa at the moment as of 3rd of August 2021?
Well, thank you, Liam, and thank you for having me on to chat with you today. It is so exciting for us to be part of your network and to be linked in with like-minded creative thinkers. It's just been wonderful as we've grown our business to expand and to meet with people like all of you. So it's awesome. So thank you. And today is a sunny, warmer day in Johannesburg. We've had a freezing winter. Well, freezing for us.
Yeah, I was going to say freezing by your standards.
By our standards, got down to 0. No snow, a little bit of frost. But yeah, we've had a very rocky time in South Africa. We've had a very bad third wave of COVID. A lot of people close to us very sick. We've got a few family members sick right now. A few friends and friends of family, friends of friends who've been passing away, which is really, really sad. Plus political turmoil. But there is some good side. I think we are moving forward with our vaccines. We are moving forward as a country, and creativity, I think, is something that is so needed, specifically in our country and across Africa, to find solutions to these problems. We've always said, and one of the reasons we founded this business is that we believe if everybody was using their creative intelligence to their full potential, we would be able to solve every problem of our day.
Well, I want to come back to that because that's one of my kind of big notes to self I've written for myself, because I think, you know, both your geography and also the time we're in are really interesting case studies, and perhaps you can give us some thoughts in a moment when we get back to that. But this kind of idea of creativity in difficult times, I think, is a really interesting idea, because I suspect, and you may have experienced, that when times are tough in businesses or in politics or just in life in general, creativity might be one of those things that gets shelved the fastest, when in fact it might be one of the things that should be right at the forefront of trying to handle challenging times. So I want to kind of come back to this idea of kind of creativity in difficult times, and what you and Celia are doing to kind of help your clients and people around the world with that. But let's just go back to the beginnings. And you talked about founding the business. So could you maybe give us, maybe those watching who don't know about Creativity Wake Up, a little bit of background on yourself and Celia, and kind of how you came to start the business and why?
Sure, thank you. So I come from a business background. I studied business science. I worked in banking and finance. I actually was going to become a chartered accountant at one stage, and then went into corporate training, and then leadership development and employee development, working in tech companies, and then working in training companies for many years. Celia comes from an architectural background. She did art and drama at school. She's a professional architect and also a fine artist. And we've always wanted to work together. We've often debated these ideas and chatted about, if we could get leaders to use art to learn and grow, but the timing was never right. I also was a real sort of corporate person, and just didn't have the courage to go out on my own, didn't really believe in myself, didn't know how I would go about it. Just a lot of self-doubt. And Celia had always been the creative one in the family. We've got another big sister who was also an accountant. And so I grew up believing, you're either an artist or you're not creative, and you must stick to the numbers. And I loved maths. But I somehow just had this sense that I had all this creativity to give. And when I got into learning design, I loved the design element. I loved thinking up ideas, and I started to realize that I had more of this creative potential. Many years ago, Celia actually gave me a book, which is a very famous, I'm sure you know it, The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. And that completely opened up my mind, blew my mind as to the creative potential that all human beings have. But it sat with me, and I didn't really act on it until in 2014, I had to have major open chest surgery. I had a huge tumor that had been growing in my chest. I'd been having severe pain for 2 years, didn't know what was wrong with me, felt like someone had a voodoo doll and was sticking pins through my chest. I had stabbing pains. Eventually, after many visits to many different doctors, they found this tumor. I don't know how they'd missed it before, because by the time they found it, it was as big as a large orange, and it had grown behind my sternum and then into my lungs and onto my heart. So when they found it, they literally rushed me, within days into surgery. And as cliched as it is, those kinds of events always give you pause to think about your life. When I came out of surgery, the surgeon said it was much worse than they thought. He said it was cancerous. He could tell because the benign tumors stay, as a sac, and this had grown and infected. Everything was infected and inflamed, and so he'd put markers for cancer. And so I had this army of people praying for me, and when the results came back, the results said the tumor was benign. So this surgeon, who's one of the top cardiothoracic surgeons in the country, said, look, I saw what I saw, there's got to be a mistake. And he sent all the results back again to be tested again, and they came back again benign. And I healed up really quickly, and have been in great shape ever since, and didn't need any radiation or chemo or anything, even though he hadn't been able to get it all out. So that was a real turning point for me, at which I thought, this is not a dress rehearsal. Let me go with what I really feel so strongly about. And soon after that, Celia was freed up from quite a lot of, she'd always been mid big projects, and she felt like she really needed a change. And we decided to found this company together. We didn't know how we were going to do it. We didn't have experience in being a startup. We've been learning. Our learning curve has been going like this. Yeah. But just with this one premise, that we strongly believe human beings are much more creative than we believe, or than we often act, that our school system and education and often businesses have, been training us in the industrial era to fulfill repetitive jobs, as we all know, as that lovely famous TED talk by Sir Ken Robinson highlighted so beautifully. It's our environment's kind of been training it out of us, and there's a way to get it back. So our premise is to help individuals and businesses understand very clearly what is creative intelligence, how do I develop it, that it's not magic, and that it can really help all of our lives. And one doesn't have to know how to draw or be any kind of artist, that it's this real way of thinking and way of stretching and using our minds. So that was the beginning.
So from a sort of reflecting on this idea, wouldn't it be nice if we got to work together? Then you needed a really big trauma to crystallize your thinking. And then you said, right, now we should probably go for it.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'm very pleased you're in good health and recovered well, and I guess something good came out of a traumatic time, and that you've got this really exciting and seemingly very busy small business. So what has that sort of entrepreneurial journey been like then since you began? So how long has the business been sort of officially up and running, would you say?
I would say it was 2019, end of 2019, that we beginning. I must not. It was middle of 2019 is when we actually registered. So we would have been working hard on it since the beginning of that year. Yeah. So we're about, let's say, just over 2 years old. Yeah. And we've been learning so much. It's so hard. And I'm sure you found this with your business at the beginning. But there's so many different aspects that you have to. There's learning about the content of what you're doing, learning about the clients, learning about the systems, learning about all the admin and everything in the background. But what I've just absolutely loved is is that we haven't been bored or grown cold. Our passion for it hasn't grown cold for 1 second. The more we know, the more we want to know. And we love, it's just like things are unfolding, like one of those beautiful big flowers that starts off as a little bud and you have no idea how big it's going to get. The people that we've been meeting, the communities, and in fact, through COVID and everybody having to be forced online, it has opened opportunities because people are so much more willing to connect. And we could always we had the tech and everything was there before, but it's so much more acceptable to be meeting people online and forming these networks anywhere in the world. So that's been
we
really
sort of globally
exciting.
needed that crystallizing moment, a bit like your personal experience, that trauma that led to a new way of maybe we needed a bit of trauma, sadly, to make us realize the technology is there. We've under leveraged it, and there are great gains to be had with all of this. And so maybe give people a bit of an overview. So what are you and Celia actually doing? What are companies coming to you and Celia for help with, and how are you helping them? Is it sort of public workshops or is it private consulting? And what's the focus of it? I love what you focus on, which is this message that, as you say, has been put into several really great books, that creativity can be learned. It's not sort of you either have it or you don't. There are loads of great techniques, very practical techniques for kind of prompting creative thinking individually and in teams. So what are you and Celia sort of working with groups on, or individuals, and sort of what are people coming to you to try and solve?
So, and I just wanted to mention before I start, one of those books, which was a real encouragement to us, is Creative Confidence by Tom and Dave Kelly of the Stanford D School. And what we loved is their story. Actually, they're brothers, and one of the brothers had a real health scare, much worse than mine. It was a cancer. But soon after he recovered, they also founded IDEO and the Stanford D School. So what Celia and I are offering to companies is we are teaching them. So we go in and offering workshops to leaders, to intact teams, or for programs. Sometimes there are up and coming, emerging leaders, but sometimes in small companies it will be for all employees to understand what is creative intelligence, how to develop their creative intelligence, and then how to be more creative as teams. We found there's been so much resistance to creativity because of the word creativity. In fact, we even have advice when we were naming our company, don't use the word creativity, use innovation. But we pushed back, and I know it has been hard, and there has been some people, and we have to do a better job at articulating what it is we do. But I think the word, the acceptance of the word is changing. People are understanding it's not all about, painting and such. But our view and what we've been helping companies understand is there is no innovation without creativity. So in my work with leadership development before Creativity Wake Up, I'd sometimes do innovation workshops, and to me, they often involved, okay, here's this innovation strategy. Awesome, we need that. Here's some innovation tools. Awesome, those are great. But how they'd be applied is people would be in a session and would be, right, okay, now we need to think of ideas. You've got 15 minutes, off you go. And the analogy we use is of a football game. You've got a strategy, you've got a team, you've got your plays, you send people out on the pitch. Fantastic. But if they're not physically fit, they're not going to get that far. And the physical fitness is like the creativity. And if the strategy is the innovation, the creativity is the physical fitness. And the manager can do fitness with the team, the trainer, but each member must also do their own fitness at home. They don't only wait to come to the field. So in that way as well, we would encourage companies, do training in your company, teach people about these things, show them and help them unpack it. And it's not rocket science and it's not magic. But people it's quite personal. Creativity is personal, and people need to be looking after their personal journey in their home. And I think companies are seeing this. We have felt a draw from many different angles. So one has been the need to innovate. We have to do something different. the need to adapt to huge change. Everything's shifting and changing. We cannot carry on the same way that we were before. So again, we need to think differently. And then also the mental well-being. People are just flat, depleted, finished, tired. And the thing with creativity is when we engage our creativity, we engage this energy that comes from within us that refills us. So it refreshes our spirit and our mind. So that's quite a difficult thing to talk to an FD about, but people are seeing that it works and that we are not pieces of software. We are human beings.
I think there's a lot to unpack in there. If we had hours to speak, I think your challenges around almost the positioning of creativity versus innovation, and it's not a versus at all. They're absolutely like this, but as you say, the labels can matter. I've said for many years that mind mapping is a label that has worked against mind mapping for many years. People sort of have a lot of misconceptions about it, and they think it's a bit fluffy and a bit nonsensical. And this choosing of your positioning and how much you have to explain yourself is really important, actually, particularly when you're getting started, trying to sort of figure out what your pitch is, and kind of what you kind of put in front of people. But so I think that's a really interesting challenge, and I can see why somebody or some people might have said don't go with creativity, but also why you kind of have to stand your ground, because that's what you kind of believe in, is this creativity piece. And I think the other thing that struck me here, which I like your analogy of the kind of the sports team taking a pitch, not being match ready, and that fitness. And I guess if I was making a leap, what you're kind of probably trying to encourage is creative habits, because I suspect you've probably in your experience encountered companies who do creativity once a year. Whereas actually what you're suggesting is, if you do your creativity once a year, people are burned out and tired. They're going to arrive not match fit. You're not going to get great gains. So it is a big part of it trying to encourage both on the personal and the sort of organizational level a habit of creativity, regular, little and often, as opposed to big, showy, one-off offsite events, that sort of thing.
Yeah. I don't think Messi or Pele or any of those guys would have done one fitness workout per year. Right. But Liam, it's also behind the habits. It's the mindset, and that is where the real shift comes. So that's where we always start. We've developed a model of creativity with a skill set and a tool set, but underneath is the mindset. And the mindset is the key, because the mindset is all about self-belief. It's about being able to persevere. It's about courage. We've got about 8 elements in there that are really important for creativity. Humor is one of them. When we take ourselves so seriously, we block and literally mentally we block our brain being able to make associations and think freely and get into flow. So for us, the mindsets are very key to underpin the habits. But yeah, so that's where we would want people to start working.
Yeah. And so if I can then sort of make the link here with how we've come to be working together with Creativity Wake Up and Biggerplate, you talk about the sort of the mindset has to then be combined with habits, practical tools, techniques, and I think that's then where sort of mind mapping fits in with your business. So maybe you could just give us a little bit of a sense of where mind mapping fits both with your business, but also where you as kind of creativity experts, where do you see mind mapping fitting in with or complementing or supporting kind of creative thinking and creative working?
Well, mind mapping is absolutely key. We start by going back to our brains and how our brains are designed. I'm a member associate of the Neuro Leadership Institute, and we love incorporating, and we think it's really important to incorporate the neuroscience. So we'll always go back to the very structure of our brains, made up of these, billions of neurons with these dendrites that connect to one another that look like a mind map. And we love the work of Tony Buzan, as you guys will use, as that, and neuroscientists to explain to us that a mind map really is a visual representation of how your brain is making connections. So to us, that is absolutely central. Then the fact that mind mapping, so we found resistance, as I'm sure you have, where people, for example, take notes in straight lines, and we're used to working in black and white or blue and white, in straight lines. When we teach people about mind mapping, and we'll usually start with it because we encourage people now to try something new and to break out and to do it, there's resistance. And we have this, and one of the key things about creativity and what we explain creativity in the brain is our brains are designed to retain energy. They're designed to use as little energy as possible. They want to take the path of least resistance. And
shortcuts wherever possible.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the other major design is to shy away from anything that's risky. So that's one aspect of our brain. But what creativity does is always the opposite, and that's why it's hard. So number one, we want to do something different, and something different is always a little bit risky, and it's going to take more energy to do something different. So the thing with creativity is it takes effort, and it takes deliberate effort. However, it is so worth it. And again, one can refer to the fitness. If we just sit on our couch, anytime we're going to exercise our body, it's going to take effort, it's going to take energy, it's going to go against our inertia, but it produces so many gains. And we've seen a shift, or I'm certainly seeing a shift in cultural thinking around this idea of, I want to be comfortable, I want to be easy, it's got to be a hack, it's got to be quick, to almost this stoicism movement, where people are saying, I understand now, I need to learn to do hard things. And we're seeing all of these leaders and personal development people and motivational speakers sitting in ice baths, getting up really early, putting out these podcasts about hard things they're doing and difficult things they're doing to train themselves. I mean, I love Tim Ferriss talking about how he has party pants. Have you heard about his party pants?
I want to.
He's trying to train himself to get over the fear of people judging him. Well, this is from quite a long time ago. So he bought himself these very, very, very ugly, scratchy, uncomfortable, I think they were made of wool or something, pants that he would wear to big events where other people would be, for example, in tuxedos and suits, and he'd have to wear those to train his mind not to worry what people think of him. That kind of thing. And so I think people are realizing, and certainly we're training people to say creativity takes effort. The magic always happens outside your comfort zone. You need to push yourself and do this hard thing. And for myself, I know I've trained myself to start taking meeting notes in mind maps. And you then think, oh, I'm a bit tired, I'm going to go back to my straight lines. And I go, no, train myself to use this new tool, and then what's hard early on becomes easier later, and you begin to see all the benefits. So with mind maps, there's just so many benefits, and we can really we push out of our comfort zone, learn something new, and then once we've learned that basics, we can push it even further and start using those mind maps in so many different ways.
And so in terms of sort of the tools of mind mapping, and you're sort of hinting at other sort of techniques and things, if you sort of were going to wrap up what companies are coming, it's fascinating because I think you're absolutely onto something, and there are shifts happening over the last few years. I think there's been a shift towards creativity, and also there's been a shift towards visual, which is a bit of a double-edged sword in my view, because I've kind of been working in the visual space, as it might be called, for however many years, and it now seems that almost every bit of software on the market is visual, which seems to me to just suggest you need to use your eyes in order to be able to work with it. But I see this kind of growth of things like sketchnoting and graphic recording, as well as the growth in things like mind mapping, to suggest there is a growing recognition that our text-based, linear-based, are not ticking all the boxes we need, and there is this requirement for different approaches for different people and different situations, plus that kind of recognition that creativity is not such a fluffy thing anymore. So do you kind of, are companies coming to you with a specific problem to solve, or do they come to you with something a little bit more vague, which is like a sense of, I feel like we need to be doing more of this stuff, but we don't know why or what? What are they kind of coming with? Do they come with problems to solve, or a general sense of unease?
So most of them have been coming with a general sense of, I feel like we need like we've got this danger of competitors closing in. We
Right.
know we need to be more creative. We know we need to have more ideas, and it's been a little bit general. I mean, we've had one or two clients say we're going to make this big shift, help us think this through, but it's more been the general. What I think mind mapping is so, and this visual thinking is so helpful for, is this increasing level of complexity. It's like we have increase in complexity within our businesses, within the marketplace, in the world, and getting this complex problem out onto paper enables us to think through the complexity better and teaches us to share, to both be looking at the same idea of our understanding of the complexity and then solve it together. And I think mind maps are wonderful for that. So helpful.
And you're using in your workshops and your work with clients, you're using sort of a combination of pen and paper, whiteboard maps, and I think you're also using software with clients as well. You're sort of introducing them to say, if you want to sort of turn those hand-drawn mind maps into maybe more functional working documents on an ongoing basis. So how are you sort of feeling the reaction to that transition into mind mapping software is fitting with your world?
So it takes time. So people need to slowly get used to it, in the hand-drawn space and then the online space. Some clients are adopting things super quickly, and some we're finding it's so many new things all at once. So now we've got these new communication platforms, and then we've got the new whiteboards, and then we've got the new effectiveness tools like Biggerplate with the mind, or like all the different mind mapping software. It can seem like a lot,
Overwhelm.
but they're getting there. They're getting there, and I think it's baby steps, and there's also huge excitement. I mean, there's some tools that I don't know about you take for granted. You've been using them for so long. For example, Trello is one of the tools we use when we are doing our planning and admin stuff. And we were chatting to a client about it. They'd never heard of it, and I said, "Here's the link. Go check it out." They came back a few days later saying, "This tool has changed our life." There were a couple of people working in software, and they were going, what have we been doing without this? So I think, and certainly I'm excited by how fast companies are developing these apps for us.
It's an exciting time, I think, to be engaging with the world of sort of mind mapping and visual tools, because there is a lot happening. And as I say, for someone who's been in it a surprisingly long time, I suddenly realize I'm a bit of an old man now. But there's a lot has improved in the last few years. I don't know whether that's just technology behind the scenes has improved, that's enabled more innovation, but that does bring with it that challenge, as you say, of people perhaps being a bit overwhelmed by the choices. We know a lot of people come to Biggerplate and get confused about whether Biggerplate is software or which software should I use for what. So you can be a bit overwhelmed by choices. So I totally get your point to just bring it back to basics and say, just get your thoughts out onto pen and paper. Mind mapping is a good place to start with that. So
can I quickly say and one more thing though? I've found when we've used mind mapping for training, and delivering training, as I know you guys do, people have said to us afterwards they find it so memorable. As long as we open up our mind map in a structured way and don't jump around too much, we show them everything. They love it because the whole time they're looking again at that structure. That element comes out, and now we're going to go deeper, and now we're going to come back, now we're going to go there, and they get a real imprint of that whole. They can in one thing see that whole context rather than a linear, I'm going through slides and slides and now here's a summary made of bullet points. It just doesn't represent what's happening in the actual brain. So people love that.
Yeah, and again, in our experience, what also then works really well is after training or webinars or these kind of things, for people to then receive that mind map in some form, it feels immediately familiar. And they can zone in on the areas they're interested in, and it works very, very well. I'd be interested in your perspectives from your sort of previous life, if I can call it that, in the corporate world, where training development, learning development type of things. Were you seeing mind mapping being used at all in that time, in that space? Because I obviously have a very strong bias towards mind mapping, but I think even if I didn't, if I was running any sort of training business, I would be using mind mapping for workshop design every day of the week, because it is just
Mm.
phenomenal for workshop design and sort of course planning. Did you sort of see any experience of that back in those days?
Yeah, I was going to say the only time we really used it was in course planning, exactly
Right.
that. So when we were sitting, we used to call it a hot box with a bunch of designers, and we'd be planning, and then we'd whiteboard on the board, but we didn't use it for actually sharing the
Delivering
content
the
with the
content.
learners.
Yeah.
Yeah. The
Really
learners
interesting.
might use it in a session if it was a strategy session sometimes. You know, it could be used in small pockets, but not generally for
Yeah.
structuring content.
It's
Yeah.
interesting. I do still see a gap in actually, to your point, sort of the mind maps, yes, being used for the planning. Again, I think I'm seeing more of that, but not seeing it probably used as much as I would sort of advocate in the delivery. And I think you're absolutely right. I think when people can kind of see the whole picture, but then you zoom in and focus on the bit you want to cover, then you zoom back out and they get a sense of, okay, here's where we are and the overall structure. I think that's a
Mm,
phenomenal delivery
mm,
mechanism. That's,
mm.
again, the links you can see between slide 13 and slide 36 is impossible. You're never going to be able to make those connections because we just can't do
We
that really.
can't. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to see mind mapping be used a little bit more in delivery of presentations and
Mm.
workshops by people who aren't advocating mind mapping, if you like, just as
Yes.
sort of course, just use that as a tool.
You make me think of our very first pilot creativity wake up workshop. We started off with mind mapping. We said, this is what it is. If you've not seen it before, create a mind map of your life quickly to introduce yourself. And everyone made a little mind map and then held it up and showed us about themselves. And we said, okay, now that you've practiced it, here is the overall structure of the content we're going to cover. One central theme with 5 spokes. And throughout the day, as we go through this, you're going to make your own mind map. And then they shared it with us at the end. And then we shared them with ours at the end of that day. So that was all the way back at our very start. We wanted people to
Yeah.
create their own mind map of the learning as they went through the day.
Yeah, brilliant. I
Yeah.
think it's a great example, great use case. So yeah, I'm a strong advocate of using mind mapping for the planning and the delivery and the follow up. I mean, one mind map
Yeah.
can do all 3 stages. I mean, if you talk about our brains liking shortcuts, that's why I like it so much. I can design a workshop, deliver a workshop, and I've got my record of the workshop all in one document. That makes my life really easy. So Nina, I want to come to you on kind of 2 things.
Sure.
I want to finish with a look forward and sort of see, right, what are you and Celia looking at for the next year of your business and this, new business and exciting and all the things that are to come. But maybe to lead into that, or just before we get to that, I want to come back to that idea we talked about right at the beginning, which is, as I scribbled to my notes here, creativity in difficult times. As I said, I suspect creativity or anything that's perhaps harder to quantify is one of the first things that gets parked or cut when things get tough. And I know I've done this myself in our business over the years. When things have become very stressed, you sort of focus in on the things that are predictable, quantifiable, known, etc., etc. So I'm interested both in terms of your experience in South Africa at the moment, or the broader sort of COVID situation that we've all been through, and what's going to follow the COVID situation as companies and people try to kind of get back into a very different world of working. Where does creativity help? Why and how can we resist the urge to park it? How can we start to build up those habits of the creative habits? What would your kind of advice be to make sure it's not the first thing on the chopping block, but actually is one of the first tools we call upon when things get a bit tricky?
Yeah. So are you asking that from individuals or from a company perspective?
I think I would always start with, individuals,
Individual.
because in
Yeah.
terms of Biggerplate, we always think of our members as individuals. They might
Mm,
work for very
mm,
big companies, but most of them are individually trying to solve a
mm,
problem.
mm,
And it's very
mm.
easy to go, well, there's big company X, but actually it's more often than not, it's Nina who works in that particular role at big company X who's trying to solve a very specific problem. So maybe
Yeah.
speak to the individuals.
Yes.
How do they not let their creative sort of habits die or sort of get
Yeah.
chopped first thing?
Yeah. So, Liam, I think it really comes down to one's philosophy and one's belief. If you believe that creative intelligence is going to help you, it is going to be something that you're not going to chop. So that's why understanding its value is so important. If I kind of want to get fit, but I don't really believe it's that important for my health, I'm going to maybe schedule that run and then decide not to on the morning. I've got to really, really believe in it and commit to it in order to stick with it. So I think the belief is absolutely key. And for that, I would advise just that people read more about it. Find some literature about the creative intelligence, do the research, and make the connection. One has to really have that insight, that penny drop for yourself to realize its value. And for me, that value is so important because it is what can help dig you out of a hole when you are really, really stuck. It can change absolutely everything. And we've had people in our courses just say, it's almost like there's a before and after when you have that major paradigm shift of not seeing possibility to seeing possibility. And that can change so many aspects of your life, in your personal life, in your business life. It really changes how you see the world. So I think the first step is to have that belief, and then to make to develop those habits and to develop them small and manageable and regular, and have some that are sort of daily things and some that you maybe do over a longer time. And then thirdly, I'd say that you get people to help. So whether you have your spouse that you both decide you're going to do it together, you have a bunch of friends, you have one, person that can help keep you accountable, that can encourage you, and that you don't try and do it on your own, because we can also always lose steam and get out of the role of it.
So a bit like going back to your fitness analogy, it's a sort of a running buddy, a training buddy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. We did an interview last week with Hillary, another Biggerplate partner who I'm sure you know, and her focus was on sort of leadership. And one of the things she talked about was, which I think resonates a lot with the creativity aspect as well, is the need to create a little bit of physical and time space for this. So I'm sure in your experience, a lot of the times when people have those breakthroughs, it's just because for the first time they've taken a moment to pause, to reflect, to think a little bit differently, and hey presto, magic happens sometimes. So I guess a big part of it as you try to build those habits is to make sure you create the time, the space, the support structures around you. And I think your advice for individuals is the same for organizations, isn't it? It's just scaling the same things up. It's trying to build those support structures, the time, the habits, and start small.
And is it important to you? Is it valuable to you? I can know what's valuable to you by going and looking at your calendar. What is valuable to you is going to be scheduled in your calendar, and you're going to do it. So if your spouse, your partner is valuable to you, hopefully you've got time scheduled that you're going to go on dates, that you're going to have time together. Or if not scheduled, it's so regular. You can't say, oh, I really, really love my partner, and then you really passing ships in the night for 2 months at a time. You've got to make time for those things. Similarly for exercise, similarly for creativity.
It's a really interesting point. I don't know if it's in the other room. There's a book I read not too long ago called Indistractable. Have you read this one?
No.
It's really very good. But the link I just want to make with what you're saying is it's one of these things that I think people associate creativity with this sort of freewheeling, no structures, no rules. And actually, it's totally the wrong way to look at it. And actually, this kind of idea that you can, if somebody might hear what you say and think that boxing into their calendar time with their partner, well, what a restriction, what an impediment to spontaneity and all of these. It just doesn't work like that. And this book, Indistractable, is really, I can't remember the author's name, but it's very much about sort of building time into your calendar so you know what you're being distracted from. If you know that this thing you want to do in this time frame is really important, and you find yourself over here, the fact that this is in your calendar means you've been distracted. Now, why is that, and what's going on there?
How interesting! That's fascinating.
And it's a very creative process. I've been sort of working with this as a technique for myself, because I just cover a lot of different things, and sometimes you find yourself jumping around, going, "Am I doing the right things?" And I found that to be a very creative way of just saying, okay, structure your time differently, build a little bit more over here and a little bit less over there. But this idea, anyhow, that creativity has to be this totally open thing is
Mm,
just, I think that
mm,
almost overwhelms people because they don't know where to start. But if you give them
yes.
very tangible start points like you just have, it suddenly becomes a little bit more manageable, a little bit more of a process. And hey, presto, you're up and running with some interesting new habits.
Yes, yes, it's almost like saying that I'll just not write, say you're a writer, so I'll not write anything and then just let the creative until the creative spark hits me. When actually it's I'll write and write and write and write, and
Yeah,
then the creative spark will hit me while I'm
yeah.
writing. And creativity has all these paradoxes, doesn't it? And I think this is part of a creative mind. You can hold two different ideas in your head at the same time that might be opposing. And so there's this discipline and freedom
Yeah.
that are together. Or there's this regularity of things that allows then the explosion of your flow. And so we need to be able to hold those different ideas in our heads.
It's actually one of the things, and it might even have come from Hillary, but it's one of the reasons I think mind mapping is so powerful. I say to people that the power of mind mapping is in structuring information, and people think that's not very sexy, it's not very exciting, but it is the structuring of my ideas and my information that helps me to expand them and to work with them a little bit more. And it is, as you say, it's a bit of a contradiction in terms to say that structuring information is what's going to unleash creative thinking, new ideas or breakthroughs in clarity. But it's absolutely been my experience personally and with many clients. So those contradictions are everywhere. Nina, in the interest of time, I'm going to
Yes,
point to my final question, which I'm
yes.
really interested and excited. What's coming next for you and Celia? You're a couple of years into this very exciting entrepreneurial journey down in South Africa. Where's the focus for you over the next kind of year or so? Where are you seeing the most attention or activity coming for yourselves?
Well, at the moment, we're doing quite a lot of work with corporates. We're finding that corporate interest is building, but what we are wanting to build underneath, and we're growing it slowly, is our individual connection with individuals. So, we want to build a base of individuals who can connect with us and have access to our courses online, or have access to events, have access to a community where people can grow their creative thinking on their own, um, and really, yeah, form this community of people who spark one another and encourage other people to come to the community. I mean, we almost think of it as in little circles. Everybody forms their own little circle, and even could form, yeah, small intact communities that encourage one another and form these little groups.
Right.
We also have a real heart for entrepreneurs and small businesses, and would love to get into working with in developing creative thinking in businesses across our country and continent. So entrepreneurs are by nature super creative already, but I think they sometimes wear themselves out. So it can be about how to replenish, how to even further boost their creativity, but also for a lot of, we have huge unemployment in this country, but huge creativity. But it's also building the creative confidence of the youth to say, believe in your ideas, believe in yourself, push the boundaries, and helping them grow. So that's all quite vague right now. I mean, we have done some work with
Yeah.
entrepreneurs, and but it's been small so far. But we'd love to continue that.
Well, hopefully, any startup founders or aspiring entrepreneurs watching now will be saying straight to your door to get some tips. Because I think one of the things as I guess, can't really call Biggerplate a startup anymore, but as a business founder, I was certainly in that camp of lots of ideas, lots of opportunities. And what I really struggled with, and I definitely would have struggled more if I wasn't using mind mapping software, was how do you take all those and do something with them? How do you
Mm,
actually translate that energy and sort of enthusiasm for 100 things into real clarity and purpose and momentum on just a few? And that's a challenge I still wrestle with 15 years after starting. So I can't say I've got it cracked yet, but I can certainly relate to the challenge. And I think in dealing with that challenge, creativity is kind of part of it. You've got to get creative about the trade-offs. You've got to get creative about which things are going to help you the most and which things can wait till later. And that's not always that easy to do, but I'm sure you've got some techniques that would help with that regard as well.
Definitely.
So Nina, it's a pleasure to speak to you and to learn a little bit more about Creativity Wake Up. I hope anybody watching today has already been inspired. If I could push you, Nina, for one thing, it would be if I was going to go away today and personally start to try and level up my own creativity, what would be your sort of one tip for me to go away and try and implement every day to just raise up a level? Assume you don't know anything about what I do or what my levels are. Where would somebody just say, right, a simple, winnable battle that I could try and do every day to just level up my creativity just a little bit? What's your kind of takeaway tip to finish with?
Liam, I would say is to start a morning writing practice. So if you could, as you open your eyes, write stream of consciousness writing for 10 or 15 minutes, where you don't judge what you write, you just let it flow out. That is a wonderful way of sort of calming your prefrontal cortex, which is full of ideas, and letting ideas from your most powerful default mode network of your brain flow out and get yourself settled for the day. So I would say that's a wonderful practice to start.
So a quick sort of scribble in the morning, maybe over your coffee, to think anything that's on your brain, just get it out. Don't worry about it. Don't try and action it. Just get it out, park it, and move on with your day.
And move on with your day. Yeah, it's a practice. Yeah, called the Morning Pages. It was made popularized by Julia Cameron. Many people do them. And the idea is not to reread what you wrote, is to write it all by hand. It's part of your brain-eye hand connection. And to just observe over time, maybe not over the first day. Some people see benefit on the first day. Themes start to emerge, solutions to your own problems, ideas for the future, and things you didn't even realize you were thinking. They allowed the time to surface from the noise of your life. So it's a real great creative practice.
There's a great tip. Well, I write a lot, but it's very messy, very scatty, but it does definitely help me. There's piles of books back there with years of Liam scribbles, but I don't think they're probably as coherent as you're suggesting. But definitely it's a good habit. So I'll give that one a try. The morning one page. I like that idea.
Yeah.
So Nina, I'll finish by just saying thank you to you and Celia for being part of the Biggerplate Partner Network and for your input, your creativity and your energy over the last year or so. We're excited to see what you do next and continue our collaboration together. For anybody wanting to find out more about Nina and Celia and their work, you can visit creativitywakeup.com. But for now, I'll say a final thank you, Nina, for joining me. Best wishes to you and Celia and all your family and friends for the next few months in what's I'm sure going to continue to be a challenging time, but hopefully creativity will get us through that. And I hope for everyone watching, you'll pop over to creativitywakeup.com and learn a little bit more.
Thank you. And thank you for welcoming us into your Biggerplate family, Liam. It's great to be with you.
Everyone's welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nina. Take care.
Bye.